They say every plague begins quietly, not with explosions, not with chaos, but with a whisper, a cough, a fever. In the autumn of 1998, a small town in Pennsylvania, quiet, peaceful, almost forgotten by the world, became the birthplace of something humanity was never prepared for. At first, the news called it a strange flu, a local sickness. Doctors dismissed it, reporters laughed it off. But in the shadows of an abandoned military facility, something unnatural was stirring. Not born of nature, not shaped by accident. It was designed, and soon the world would know it as the last outbreak. The first attack wasn't seen on the news. It happened inside a diner on a rainy evening. Witnesses recall a man slumping over his plate, motionless. At first, they thought he had choked. The waitress rushed to help him, and then he rose. But his eyes were vacant, his skin pale, and his hunger wasn't human. With unnatural strength, he tore into her flesh, as screams echoed through the diner. Sheriff Sam arrived moments later, gun drawn. One shot, then two, then three. The man fell, but rose again, staggering forward until the sheriff destroyed his skull. That was the night the town understood. This wasn't an illness. It was the end of life itself. The government moved quickly. Barricades were built around the town. Roads were closed. Helicopters thundered overhead. But it was already too late. One infected turned into 10. 10 became 50. And by the time soldiers surrounded the area, hundreds of bodies roamed the streets. Families locked themselves inside their homes. But doors cannot hold back hunger. Windows shattered. Walls collapsed. And every scream became another corpse, rising to join the swarm. In this nightmare, a few souls clung to survival. Dr. Emily Carter, a virologist, driven by logic but haunted by the unknown. Mark, an ex-soldier with a past tied to the shadows of government experiments. Lisa, a curious college student, reckless enough to document the horror with her camera. And Sheriff Sam, a man who had sworn to protect his town, even if it meant facing hell itself. Together, they hid inside an abandoned school. Dark halls echoed with distant moans. Every creak of wood could be a footstep. Every shadow could be death waiting to pounce. They whispered in fear, argued in desperation, but survival meant staying quiet. And in a world consumed by screams, silence was impossible. Emily searched for answers in blood samples. What she found was not natural. The infection spread not only through bites, not only through blood, but in its later stages it released spores, invisible, drifting through the air. No wall, no mask, no barricade could truly stop it. And then came the truth. This virus wasn't an accident. It wasn't nature's curse. It was a weapon, born in hidden laboratories, created to destroy, not to cure. Mark confessed in a trembling voice. He was part of the military project that gave birth to this horror. And now, it had grown beyond their control. The safe house did not last. Lisa, desperate to share their story, went live on the internet. Her voice shook as she cried, "If you're watching this, please, stay away from Pennsylvania." Her broadcast lasted 3 minutes before screams drowned it out. The horde had found them. They came crashing through doors and windows. Sam held the barricades with his shotgun until the tide consumed him. Lisa ran, but a single bite marked her fate. And Emily and Mark crawled through the tunnels, chased by echoes of death. In the darkness, Lisa changed. Her eyes dulled. Her voice turned into growls. Her last words were a whisper of regret before hunger took her body. Mark raised his weapon, but his hands shook. Emily begged him to stop, but mercy had no place here. Lisa lunged, and the shot silenced her forever. Silence fell, but silence in this world was never peace. It was the pause before another storm. They reached the military quarantine zone, only to find it already destroyed. Soldiers lay torn apart. The dead gathered like an endless sea. Mark fought like a man with nothing left to lose. But Emily noticed the truth. His sleeve was stained with blood. A bite mark. His time was already running out. Without a word, Mark sealed Emily inside a bunker. She screamed, pounded the door, but he walked into the storm of the undead, guns blazing, buying her a few precious moments of life. Emily survived, but survival is not victory. Emily Carter opened her eyes to the silence of the bunker, concrete walls, rusted shelves, and the hum of old generators. She thought she had survived. But in this world, survival was only the first curse. On the wall, she found files, abandoned reports by soldiers. They spoke of Pennsylvania not as a disaster zone, but as a test site. There were other towns, other zones, other outbreaks. Emily wasn't a survivor. She was just another subject in a far bigger experiment. Days passed in the bunker. Food grew scarce. Water grew bitter. But something else began to gnaw at Emily. The voices. At first, they came in dreams. Whispers of her name, faint as the wind. But then, she saw them. Through the cracks of the bunker door, dozens of pale faces pressed against the glass. Dead eyes, rotten skin. Yet they did not break in. They only watched. And one of them spoke. Not with a scream, not with a growl, but with a whisper. Her name. Emily escaped through the tunnels beneath the bunker. For hours, she wandered through the endless woods. And then light. A camp. Fires burning. Voices singing. For the first time in weeks, humanity. Here she met Reverend Jonah, who preached the outbreak was divine punishment. Tara, the scavenger, who lived by her blade and her rage. And Ethan, a boy who hadn't spoken a word since the day his family turned. Among strangers, Emily felt hope. But hope, in this world, was only bait. The camp didn't last. That night, they came. But these were not the infected Emily remembered. They moved in packs. They climbed the trees. They used jagged wood as weapons. And when the first howler screamed, the sound was so sharp, so unnatural, that every survivor froze in terror. The horde fell upon them like a storm. Blood, fire, screams. Humanity's last defenses torn apart in minutes. Emily, Tara, and Ethan escaped into the woods, but behind them the camp burned, and with it, the last illusion of safety. In the ruins of an old church, Emily found something. A recorder, and on it, the voice of Mark. His words cracked through static. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. They weren't building weapons. They weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to replace us. The infected aren't the end of humanity. They're the next humanity. Emily felt her blood run cold. The dead weren't evolving by chance. They were evolving by design. The church windows rattled. Outside, the evolved horde stood in silence. Emily clutched her knife. Tara readied her blade. But then, Ethan spoke. His voice was small, fragile, but the words were not his. They were the whispers she had heard outside the bunker. The whispers of the dead. Emily froze. The boy smiled faintly, and in his eyes, there was no humanity left. Hope was gone. Faith was gone. And in the ashes of the world, only one truth remained. The last outbreak was never the end. It was the beginning of something far darker.